Welcome, everyone, to the Ready for the Draft podcast. I am your host, Gregg Schutze. This is episode 13 of the 2024 podcast series, where we take a look at the draft-eligible prospects and get you ready for the NFL draft. And this is the second episode dedicated to bowl season, taking a look at each one of the bowl games, finding the draft prospects that we need to make sure that we're paying attention to as we progress through each of the bowl games. And now, the last podcast that we had was just a couple of days ago, and we recapped the first weekend of bowl games. We made it all the way through from Ohio and Georgia Southern, all the way through Texas Tech and Cal. And, there are a couple of additional bowl games that were kind of sprinkled in there between then and now. One of those being the famous Toastery Bowl between Western Kentucky and Old Dominion. Now, in that game, Malachi Corley was I actually thought that he wasn't going to play. He did sit out the second half, but Corley did get to play in that first half. And, when you see him out there on the field, he's 5'11", 210 pounds. He's built like a running back. He's so difficult to bring down. He'll look to run you over, can line up on the outside and in the slot. He's going to continue to drive through tackles for extra yards. He's a lot like Deebo Samuel in that way. And, 75 catches, over 900 yards, 11 touchdowns on the year. He's a guy that's going to be a day 2 pick. And, Deebo Samuel was a second rounder. I think Malachi Corley has a good chance to be a second rounder as well there for Western Kentucky. But the guy that really everyone, I think, was wanting to talk about during this game, because obviously Austin Reed, he's out. Turner Helton started. Then you have Caden Veldkamp, who stepped in, over 380 yards and 5 touchdowns in the win. And, but Dalvin Smith, 6'3", 188 pounds. He's only a redshirt junior, so there's a good chance that he'll come back for another season. Just over 1,000 yards in his career. Was a tight end as a freshman. But this was a guy who was making some highlight reel catches, comes across the field. He was running like a drag route at about 3 yards, staying parallel to the line of scrimmage, reaches up over his head with his right hand, just plucks it out of the air, secures it with one hand, gets down the field for the score. Ran a skinny post, got behind the defense, easily plucking it for a touchdown as well. His third touchdown of the game was a fade. Runs up the field, able to get into the chest of the corner, plants, opens up on the outside on the back shoulder throw, reaches up with his right hand and just plucks it as the left hand is positioned against the DB. 9 catches, 77 yards, and those 3 touchdowns. Dalvin Smith, a guy that I think everyone's going to start, if he's not on your radar after a performance like that in the bowl game, he's definitely a guy that you're going to be keeping an eye on. And then with Jason Henderson being out for ODU, all focus had to be on Wayne Matthews, and I think he really elevated his game and another 14 tackles, a half tackle for loss, pass breakup, over 100 tackles, 121 to be exact, 8.5 tackles for loss, 2.5 sacks. This is a guy that comes downhill. He's going to meet you in the hole and drive you down the field. I saw him turning and running on wheel routes with the running back Davion Irvin Poindexter. A guy that showed off really nice athleticism, a guy that was also right there at that goal line and was able to blitz right off the edge, get to Veldkamp, get a sack, force a 4th and goal at the 15-yard line. So again, 6'2", 225, only a redshirt sophomore, but a guy that I think we need to really be keeping an eye on. And then UTSA taking down Marshall 35-17 in the Frisco Bowl. A couple of underclassmen here at the quarterback position, sons of NFL quarterbacks. Josh McCown's son, Owen McCown there for the Roadrunners. Over 250 yards and 250 yards and a couple of touchdowns, threw a pick as well. And then Chad Pennington's son, Cole, 15-33, 258 yards in a losing effort there for the Thundering Herd. I think for UTSA, the guy that really jumped out was Joshua Cephas. 7 receptions, 102 yards, and that 6'3", 185 showcased some surprising speed. I think deceptive speed, if you will. A guy that was able to accelerate from away from the defenders and get down the field. There was a quick screen that he gets a block on the inside and showcase that speed going down the field there. Like I said, 44-yard touchdown as well. Came across the formation, makes a catch in the flat, and then just showed the ability to take off down the field and eat up a lot of yards in a hurry with those long strides. Unfortunately, we didn't get to see Frank Harris, who really put UTSA on the map during his career there. With the shoulder injury, he was out. Marshall, Rasheen Ali, he was the guy that I was talking about in the last podcast, and once again, he kind of set the stage there for another big game. 9 carries for 92 yards and a score. He did have 28 receptions in 2023. Didn't have any in the bowl game. This was a guy, over 1,400 yards and 23 touchdowns in 2021. Missed 10 games in 2022. Comes back at Myrtle Beach Bowl MVP, and then over 1,000 yards and 14 touchdowns yet again in 2023. But this is a guy who took the handoff, around edge, off tackle, then showed the speed in the open field to take it a distance for a 64-yard run. The burst and the ability to get down the field in a hurry. 6 foot 201. Rasheen Ali is a guy, to me, keep an eye on him. He's a guy that I think is going to end up rising up draft boards during the pre-draft process, and I thought there was nothing that he did in this game other than continue to showcase his ability to make plays. So definitely was impressed with his play. And at the end of the day, though, UTSA was just a little bit too much. Being able to get the ball into the end zone there, and the battle of the NFL quarterback sons, the edge and the bragging rights, if you will, go to Luke McCown. So those are just kind of catching you up on some of the guys that I was keeping an eye on during the bowl games that have been playing out thus far. But now it's time to take a look at the previews, and I think really what we need to start with are the playoff games, right? First, you've got the Rose Bowl in Pasadena, first-ranked Michigan Wolverines taking on Alabama, and when Michigan's on offense, you're going to have J.J. McCarthy, a guy that hasn't really been asked to be the guy, and that's really, I think, the biggest concern that I think everyone has with J.J. McCarthy is this guy going to can he rise to the occasion and be the guy that's going to lead his team to victory versus just a guy who's more of a game manager and allows the running game to really kind of stir the drink. He was 10th in the Heisman voting this year, 6'3", 197. Really a banner year for him. 74% completion percentage, over 2,600 yards, 19 touchdowns, just 4 interceptions. Tremendous arm. You love the arm talent, his ability to make the throws to all 3 levels of the field. Accuracy, pushing the football down the field. I think there are some. He gets himself into trouble at times, especially when he's on the move. That's one of the big areas of concern that you have with him, and really, if Michigan is down, that's going to be the biggest thing. Can J.J. McCarthy continue to will this team and put the team on his back and lead him to victory? That's going to be a big question mark. Blake Corum, the running back. I think Corum is a guy who's he's got a nose for the end zone, but really what I want to see is, can Blake Corum really showcase that form of the lateral agility, his ability to make guys miss in the hole and then burst the speed and then run you over to finish his runs. That's really what I'm looking for from him. 5'8", 212. And look, this is going to be a stout Alabama defense that he's going up against, especially against the run. Deontay Lawson, Tresman Marshall, they're at the linebacker position. Those are going to be guys patrolling the middle of that defense, and you really want to see what Corum and company can do. That offensive line, again, without Zach Zinter, broke his leg, kind of a nasty injury, but a guy that he should be returning to full health in time for an NFL training camp, and a guy that I think is probably the 4th best guard in this year's draft. But you have Trevor Keegan there at the left guard spot. Ladarius Henderson is a guy that I think struggles with speed. We saw that against Penn State, Chop Robinson. So that's one of the things that I think what you're going to see is if Dallas Turner, Chris Braswell can have success coming off the edge and getting to J.J. McCarthy in a hurry, much like they did against Penn State. More ball control, more running the football, and that's where a guy like Justin Boygby, there at that defensive end position, he's going to have a big game, being able to hold the point of attack, shed blocks, and be disruptive around the line of scrimmage against that run game. I think that's going to be a huge key for Bama. Really put a lot of pressure on that offensive line, rushing the passer. Drake Nugent does a really good job there up the middle, but I think that speed coming off the edge, we've already seen what happens and what Michigan does to adjust to that. But if they start getting down, if Jalen Milroe starts working his magic, when he gets hot and that Bama offense really gets moving, what is Michigan going to do to respond? I think in the secondary, Kool-Aid McKinstry, he was injured in the game, but it sounds like he'll probably in the SEC championship he should be back. And McKinstry is just he's a smooth, polished corner on the outside. You figure he'll be matched up with Roman Wilson quite often. Terrion Arnold is a guy. Look, this guy he's physical. He's versatile. I think he can play in the safety spot. He can play in the slot if you want him to. But he's a guy on the outside. He just needs to trust his technique. Way too grabby, way too handsy. That's going to be a big issue. I think he has a chance to be, CB1 in this draft if he weren't so grabby and so handsy. I think because of that could send him down the draft boards just a little bit. But definitely, they've got two stellar standout corners. The big key, I think, for Michigan is going to be, involving Colston Loveland, the tight end. He's going to be, one of the top tight ends in next year's draft. Keep an eye out for him. What happens there? That's really going to be an interesting guy to potentially target at some point early in the draft. But he'll be a weapon up the seam. Who's going to be matched up with him? That's going to be a big question mark. Is it going to be one of the young safeties like Caleb Downs, Malachi Moore? A guy that we could be seeing at some point on day 3 in this draft. A guy that is versatile, can play safety, can play the nickel, plays a lot of different positions. He might be the guy that's tasked with matching up with Colston Loveland. And then when Bama has the ball, Jason McClellan, was injured in the SEC championship. Is he going to be back? Is it going to be Roydale Williams that's going to be carrying the bulk of the load? That's a huge question mark, right? With Bama, can they continue to run the football? You saw what Bama was able to do though against Georgia. Jalen Milroe, 13-23. So the completion percentage just wasn't there. 192 yards and 2 touchdowns. Big plays, really showcased what was happening there with Bama. That's when you needed Milroe to complete a pass down the field, you were getting that from him. Michigan is a team that they play sound team defense. That's going to be, I think, a key for them. Who's going to be covering Jermaine Burton? Jermaine Burton is one of those guys who just always seems to get open at the right time. Mikey Sainer still, look, he in the Big Ten championship had two tackles, a sack, 2 forced fumbles, a pass breakup, quarterback hurry. Sainer still does a little bit of everything. If you'll remember when he started there at Michigan, and I swear it feels like he's been there for the better part of a decade. But when I think about Mikey, this is a guy who started his career as a receiver. He's only 5'10", 182 pounds, but look, he proved that he could play on the outside. He's a nickel. He can play safety if you need him to. He's going to come downhill in a hurry. He's going to play in the box. He's going to get physical when you need him to. And you love his instincts. You love his ability to, his blitzing coming off the edge. He timed the blitzes perfectly, getting to Deacon Hill. He's going to be, I think, a key performer there on that defense. Patrolling the, as that additional defender out there. Is Will Johnson going to be back? That's going to be a big question mark. If not, then I think Sanders still against Burton is going to be a matchup to watch, and then that's ultimately going to force, I think, with Bama, Isaiah Bond, Kobe Prentice, some of those other receivers to step up and make plays. They're just inconsistent with that. So I think that's going to be a huge key for Michigan. I look at J.C. Latham. J.C. Latham is the right tackle that is so strong at the point of attack. I think he may be the strongest and most physical of the offensive linemen in this year's draft. And I've struggled with him at times because I feel like, he seemed bored at times, and he just didn't always move his feet. He wanted to overpower guys at the point of attack. But then when you see what he can do when he's actually locked in and dialed in, you see the knee bend, you see the effortless ability to move laterally, and then just the physicality, though, and the strength, his power at the point of attack. He just shoves guys around, drives guys, 4, 5, 6 yards down the field. He's going to go up against, some physical guys, in their own right. Braden McGregor, a guy that can hold the point of attack. Jalen Harrell, coming off the edge as an edge rusher. I think he'll probably be giving fits to Caden Proctor, the left tackle. I really want to see Chris Jenkins have a big game. I think Chris Jenkins is one of those guys at the defensive tackle position, probably could very well be a day 2 pick. He's just not a flashy guy. He's not flashy at all, but he's very athletic and a guy that I think could he be a day 2 guy? There isn't enough production from him, I think, to really warrant a day 2 pick. I think 4th round probably feels right, but I think he's a guy that could be a 34, a 5 technique and a 34 defense. Could also be a defensive tackle like Michigan has in the 43. Junior Colson's going to have a big game. The linebacker, 100 tackle guy, and a guy that flies around to the football. Very heady player, intelligent guy, 6'3", 247 pounds. He's a guy that I think teams are going to be trying to key in on throughout the season, and Bama's going to be no exception. Rod Moore, another guy that I'm expecting to have a big game. I think he and Sainer are still on the back end of that defense, especially if Will Johnson isn't able to go. That's going to be the big, another big key. At the end of the day, it's Michigan is going to have to be able to throw the football a little bit. I worry about the passing attack there, or lack thereof. If you've got the edge rushers coming off the edge. But look, they were able to pivot. They were able to change things up when Penn State was able to rush off the edge. The difference is I think that offense, what can they do to disrupt Jalen Milroe? I think Milroe, he's made some big plays. It's mostly the splash plays, big plays. Michigan's very disciplined on defense. I think Michigan ends up getting it done. I've gone back and forth with this, but I think at the end of the day, Michigan ends up winning this game. It's going to be close, but I think Michigan ends up pulling out the victory because they don't give up any of those big plays, because they're able to control the football with that ground game. That's going to be a big key and something that I think we'll have to continue to keep an eye on. I thought Kendall Milton and Dijon Edwards, when they got going against Bama, that was really where Georgia was really able to get a lot of momentum going and generate a lot of that move in the football. Then you've got, after that, if that game wasn't enough, you also have the Sugar Bowl with Washington and Texas. Now we've got the 2 quarterbacks, right? You're going to have Michael Penix Jr. against Quinn Ewers. And Penix Jr., we already know, we've talked about it at length. The big arm, his ability to throw the football down the field with just a flick of a wrist to the wide side of the field on a line, 45-plus yards, and hit guys in stride. The footwork is still pretty sloppy because he's able to do so much with that upper body. Is he mobile? Sure, he's mobile in the pocket, but you worry again about the knee injury. I don't know that he's the most mobile guy. I think there's enough there, especially when you look at Texas's defense. That D-line, T'Vondre Sweat, Byron Murphy up the middle. Then you're going to have Barron Sorrell and Anthony Hill coming off the edge with Jalen Ford looking to shoot the A-gap. You've got some athleticism. You've got some guys that are going to really try to wreak some havoc. That offensive line has been a key for him, kept him upright. That's going to be, I think, one of the things that is going to surprise Texas, I think, is how good that offensive line is. Troy Fatanu, first-round pick, written all over him, right? At left tackle, probably be a Pro Bowl guard, if he wants to. I think ultimately that's where he should be. He's my number 1 guard, and I look at where his matchup. He'll be going up against the likes of Barron Sorrell. Sorrell is a guy that's kind of had an up-and-down season, not very consistent, and I think that Fatanu can basically take him out of the game. So that's going to be a big big thing is that the linebackers are going to have to step up and make plays. The good news about that for Washington is Dylan Johnson's a good pass protector. Dylan Johnson's one of those guys who I thought was a fringe day 3 guy at Mississippi State. He shows up at Washington, and all you had to do was just watch that USC game and say this is a dude that belongs at the next level. The physicality with which he runs, 6 foot 215, contact balance, just runs through anybody. I mean, that SC game, 26 carries, 256 yards, and 4 touchdowns. Granted that was against an Alex Grinch-led defense, but still, it was one of those things to where pretty impressive performance overall, over 1,000 yards. This past season as the bell cow. He never got more than 89 carries in Starkville. Shows up in Seattle, 201 carries, and pretty consistent. At a 5.5 yards per carry. That's really what you see from him. And then the 14 touchdowns. Here's the thing, 168 receptions in his career. Only had to catch the ball 19 because of all the receivers that Washington has. But a guy at Mississippi State, 149 receptions running in that air raid offense of Mike Leach, the late great Mike Leach, the Pirate, rest in peace. But when I look at Washington, the physicality there and being able to eat up yards when needed, the big key is going to be can the interior of that line, if there is a weakness, it's the interior of that line, and that's really where the strength of Texas's defense is. You've got Devondre Sweat, at 360 pounds. This dude is the Outland Trophy Award winner for the top interior lineman, and he's so quick off the football. To go along with the fact that he is so strong and so physical at the point of attack, you just can't move him off the point. Byron Murphy, though, is a guy that I think could end up getting drafted even higher than Devondre Sweat. Very athletic. You see the quick arm overs. You see the lateral cuts coming off the football, and a guy that is going to make a lot of plays right around the line of scrimmage. So the two of them really need to be active there against Dylan Johnson. I think Jalen Ford's the other guy, number 41, the middle linebacker. This is a guy that I've been high on the last couple of years. And at 6'2", 221, had 119 tackles a season ago, 4 interceptions as well. 20 and a half tackles for loss, 3 sacks in the last 2 years. Had 91 tackles this past season, another 2 interceptions, 4 pass breakups in the last 2 years as well. This is a guy, he's just an intelligent player. He's not going to be flashy. He's not going to be a guy that's going to set the world on fire at the combine, but a guy that is he's instinctive. He always seems to be around the football. He can make plays sideline to sideline. He can drop into coverage. To me, he's a 3-down linebacker. I think he has to have a big day. I really do. He's got to be able to really focus on that run, and then be able to ultimately, if they're one-dimensional, still you've got Michael Penix Jr., you've got 3 top-end wide receivers, but at least that takes away Dylan Johnson running the football if you can shut that down, which is easier said than done. But then you've got Rome Odunze, who to me is a top 10 pick. This is a guy who has tremendous body control, the route running ability, and then the vertical speed. Guy can do a little bit of everything. Then you've got Jalen Polk on the outside, who's an underrated receiver, and then Jalen McMillan there in the slot. Those 3 receivers, what's the health status of Ryan Watts? Is he going to be playing? Probably doesn't look like it, although there's still time. Malik Muhammad, you got Terrence Brooks, Michael Tafe, Jaron Thompson on the back end there. These are going to be guys that are going to have to step up in a big way. Keaton Crawford, Morris Blackwell, Gavin Holmes. You're going to have to throw a lot of guys at this offense, and that's going to be the big question mark, is are they going to be able to do that? I just don't know that they are able to, that they have enough to deal with that firepower. Now here's the thing, when Texas is on has the football, Quinn Ewers had one of his best games against Oklahoma State in that Big 12 championship. He went 35 of 46, 452 yards, 4 touchdowns on the day, just 1 interception. And Quinn Ewers, look, we know that he's going to be coming back for one more year there at Texas. I think there's no question that there's no reason for him to come out, especially after the injury that plagued plagued him during the season. When you look at Quinn Ewers, his ability to throw the deep ball with accuracy, the corners there for Washington are really going to have to step up and make plays. So you're talking about Jabbar Muhammad. Jabbar Muhammad is a guy who I thought, the transfer from Oklahoma State. This is a guy who I think has really made a name for himself on the outside as a lockdown corner. 5'10", 183 pounds, a guy that's probably going to line up in the slot. Fooled Bo Nix on a couple of plays. Very intelligent player. Good body control. There was a sluggo that Troy Franklin ran. He comes down, but able to get back outside, extends into the wide receiver on the outside, but didn't impede him. And ultimately called for a defensive pass interference, but looked like it was really a solid play. But this is a guy that is a lockdown, shutdown corner on the outside. He's going to have a big day. I think Elijah Jackson, Thaddeus Dixon are a couple of guys that are also going to have to step up and play well. Michelle Powell, Asa Turner, at the nickel and safety spots. I think Dominique Hampton also going to have a big day. Be very physical and get after the Texas receivers, because Adonai Mitchell, 6 catches, 109 yards and a touchdown against Oklahoma State. He's a tall guy, really good speed at 6'4", 185, tremendous wingspan and the catch radius, but then his ability to sink his hips with the route running ability. He's a guy that's a fringe first rounder, maybe an early day 2 guy. He's going to present some problems, for that secondary. And then Xavier Worthy, he was seen on crutches during the Big 12 championship, but there's a good chance that he will make it back for the Sugar Bowl. This is a speedy dude, 6'3", 6 receptions, 86 yards in that game against Oklahoma State. But, he's 6'1", I want to say about 180, and a guy that just seems to find, has a nose for the end zone, very shifty, the speed on the outside, a guy that's going to be a threat to go the distance on any play. And then Jatavion Sanders, the tight end. This is the guy, against Oklahoma State, 8 catches for 105 yards and a score. He's, who's going to line up against him is going to be a big question mark. It's probably going to be Hampton. It's probably going to be Powell. He's got the size mismatch there. And, what you love with Sanders is the ability to make plays after the catch. I think he's still a work in progress as a blocker. But he's not overly powerful, but definitely a guy that can make plays. You get the ball in his hands, he's going to be dynamic, stretching the field up the seam. When I look at this team, Washington putting pressure on the quarterback, you're going to have Zion Tupuola-Fatui. I think he's a day 3 guy, right now for me. But I look at Braylon Trice, number 8. Dude, he's got a motor that never stops. He's always working to the quarterback, speed to power. When you look at the pressures, he's second. Is he first or second in pressures with Leatu Latu? He's right there. He doesn't have the sack total that Latu has, but the motor is always running. I think he needs to vary up his rush moves a little bit, the rush arsenals, to be able to get to the quarterback a lot quicker. But look, it doesn't matter, just the sack totals. If you can put pressure on the quarterback, if you can hit him, if you can make him uncomfortable, move him off his spot, and that's where quarterbacks can start making mistakes. And I think that's where, Braylon Trice, attacking Kelvin Banks Jr., who has a chance to be a first rounder, Christian Jones, I think his the physicality with which he plays, he can bend a little bit, a guy who, he can also set the edge against the run. So when CJ Baxter, they're looking to try to get him going in the run game, or Keelan Robinson, Jaden Blue, they've got a lot of speed at the running back position. So that's going to be a key, is being able to set the edge and then letting Edifon Olafosho, the inside linebacker, really flow and make plays on the middle of the defense. I think Washington gets it done against Texas. I really do. For all the reasons that I've talked about. I think they're going to be able to make Quinn Ewers uncomfortable. I think ultimately what you're going to see is a defense that's going to be opportunistic. I think they're going to be physical, and we saw that against Oregon. The physicality and the ability to make those tackles in the open field, so that they could make plays after the catch. Texas, they're going to want to run after catch, whether it's Sanders, whether it's Worthy, Jordan Whittington, loves to run those crossing routes and be physical coming across the field. Adonai Mitchell, he's a speedster, but if they can't get going because you're right on top of them right after the catch, then that's going to really obviously bode well for Washington. I think at the end of the day, we're going to see Washington get it done. It'll be Washington and Michigan in the championship. So then let's take a look at the group of, the New Year's Six bowls. Let's take a look at the rest of these bowl games, and then we'll go ahead and kind of work our way, back to front. When you look at Oregon and Liberty, Oregon, we already know that Bucky Irving has opted out. Their running back, a guy who I think is a top 5 running back in this year's draft, a guy who can catch the football on the outside. You love the shiftiness, his ability to break tackles. Jackson Powers Johnson, the center, 829 snaps this past season. He's a physical dude, but he's also athletic. He can climb to the second level. He's going to drive you down the field. He's got a great personality to boot, and I think. And then, the question really is Bo Nix. He said he's going to play in the game in the Fiesta Bowl. That's going to be a big question mark. That's somebody that, I'm looking forward to see play, see what he can do against Liberty. I think ultimately Oregon's going to end up winning this game going away. The question will be, will Troy Franklin play? Will Brandon Dorlus play? When I look at Dorlus, this is a guy who, the physicality, especially with his hands. I think this would be a really nice 5 technique. He's a guy that is versatile though, so he could also play in an even man front on the interior of the line as well. This is it's an interesting group. Troy Franklin, the speedster. On the outside, he's one of those fringe first round, possible second round type of receiver. So he's an interesting guy as well. When I look at Liberty, Caden Salter, the quarterback, you're going to see athleticism. You're going to see, some decent arm talent. I think CJ Daniels, his receiver there on the outside, is going to be the number 1 target with Kyrie Jackson opting out to make himself eligible for the draft as well. Then the question really is going to be, and then Bridges, one of the other corners, he's in the transfer portal, so is it going to be Dante Manning? I think CJ Daniels is going to have a big day. 6'2", 200 pounds, redshirt junior, but a guy that can make plays on the outside. Like I said, 7 catches, 157 yards. He's a guy that can make plays out there. That was against New Mexico State in the Conference USA Championship game. So that's going to be the key matchup for me to really watch when Liberty has the football. But I still think Oregon, is going to win going away. I think that defense is just going to struggle with the talent level there, on the other side of the football there for the Ducks. When we move on from there, you've got the Citrus Bowl, and that's going to take Pitt, number 17 Iowa, and number 21 Tennessee. When I look at Iowa, obviously Cooper DeJean, the season-ending injury in Week 11, that was huge. Losing him, it was. He's really the guy that kind of stirred the drink on the defensive side of the football for the Hawkeyes, and a guy that was just so much fun to watch. I think he'll ultimately be a safety at the next level, and he's my will be my number 1 safety. I haven't changed my rankings yet, but I think I am going to move him to safety, and that's where the ball hawk ability and his ability to play over the top. But I look at Jay Higgins. Jay Higgins, he's replacing Jack Campbell, and Jay Higgins is not the athlete that Jack Campbell is, but he's a hard-nosed inside linebacker, 6'2", 233. He's disciplined. When they played Michigan in the Big Ten Championship, met Blake Corum in the hole, wrapped him up, got low, wraps him up and drives him down. Had 141 tackles going into that game. The tight end, Colson Loveland, runs a crossing route, sitting in the middle of the defense, read J.J. McCarthy's eyes, drove on the tight end in a hurry, wraps him up immediately, no yak. So he's a guy to keep an eye out for sure. And then Sebastian Castro, an interesting guy. He's the nickel back. He's a guy that kind of flies around, makes a lot of different plays, really wears a lot of hats. He's 5'11", 205. He's undersized, but he's going to look to deliver a big hit. Another guy who's a very sound tackler in the open field. He has the speed. Hung with Donovan Edwards on a swing route, was able to kind of string him out to the sideline. Only ended up giving up just a short gain. Takes great angles to the football. So when I look at Iowa on the back end, those are a couple of the guys that I'm really looking forward to seeing play. Offensively, the question will be just how many first downs will Iowa even have? I think Torrey Taylor, the Ray Guy Award winner, is going to play a pivotal role, in the success of the Iowa Hawkeyes, just really being able to flip the script, flip the field on Tennessee. And when I look at Tennessee, obviously you've got Joe Milton. He's got a big arm, but accuracy is a big issue. All he throws is a fastball. That's really going to be the big thing that you're going to see out of him. Can he dial the throws back? That's huge. I think Jalen Wright, the running back, he's opted out. There are a lot of injuries on their side of the football. The question, Tyler Barron, the edge rusher, he's actually in the transfer portal. I think that'll be a nice get for whoever is able to pick him up. Aaron Beasley in the middle of the defense. This is a guy that's going to come downhill and look to make some plays there. James Pierce, he's only a sophomore, but a dynamic edge rusher. Offensively, without Brew McCoy, the physicality, Ramel Keaton can be a vertical threat, but the drops worry you a bit. You're going to have Jabari Small now because Jalen Wright is sitting out. Jabari Small is going to be asked to really get the job done there, running the football. I think at the end of the day, John Campbell, watch him there at left tackle. I want to see his matchup against Deontay Craig, who's an active defensive end. I think Campbell's a guy that could find himself drafted when it's all said and done. But when I look at this game, I think Iowa's defense is going to give Joe Milton fits. If you had Jalen Wright, not having him in the game, I think that's going to be a trouble spot there as well. I just think that moving Joe Milton around, the accuracy drops quite a bit. The touch throws just aren't there from Milton, and so I think at the end of the day, the Iowa Hawkeyes end up winning this game. But keep an eye on Joe Milton, how he plays in this bowl game. I think with his draft stock, there are some big question marks there right now. So, what's that going to look like? LSU taking on Wisconsin in the ReliaQuest Bowl. This is an interesting matchup because the guys that I would tune in to watch, Braylon Allen, the running back, Jaden Daniels, the quarterback there at LSU, even Tanner Bortolini, the center there for Wisconsin. Those are the guys that I'd really want to tune in and watch, and they are all sitting out the bowl game. So Mekhi Wingo, he suffered a season-ending injury in week 8, so we won't get to see him either. LSU, Brian Thomas, Malik Neighbors, I don't know if they've said whether or not they're going to play. I would expect both of them to sit out because those are both first-round receivers in my opinion. Malik Neighbors is going to be a top 10 pick, and I think Brian Thomas probably somewhere in the 20s if I had to guess. Mason Smith, I think everybody's waiting for him to start making plays, and I think this is going to be an opportunity for him to potentially do that on a big stage there against Wisconsin. That's a big question mark though. What type of production are you going to get out of him? Omar Spates, I think everyone was counting on him having a big year coming out of the play there at Oregon State. He hasn't really lived up to that. Harold Perkins, if they just turn him loose and let him, instead of dropping him into coverage or expecting him to do a lot of those things, just let him get after the quarterback and do what he does. That's going to be a key there for LSU. But Wisconsin, when you ultimately, because I believe Ches Malusi is out with an injury as well. I think he broke his leg. I don't know. Cade Yakimelli, is he going to be able to run the football? Is Tanner Mordecai going to be playing, or is it going to be Braden Locke? Jack Nelson, the junior left tackle, he'll be a guy to keep an eye out for sure. A guy that I think has had an up and down year. He's had really, the highs have been pretty high, the lows have been pretty low there at the left tackle spot. And when I say that, I thought he looked good against JT Tuimoloau, power in his hands. ultimately threw him off his rush, and then the feet catching up with the hands and able to keep him in front and mirror him. But he struggled with the speed of Ron Stone Jr. Against Washington State. There's a guy, Ron Stone Jr. is a name to keep an eye out for. A guy who I want to say he was a 6-year senior there at Washington State, so he was an older player, but man, active hands and very fast, and that speed really gave Jack Nelson problems. But when you got a guy like Moloau, who's not nearly as fast as Ron Stone, he was able to handle some of that. Also got physical with Jack Sawyer, got out on the edge, was waiting to meet him there, gets his hands on him, physical, drives him up the field. So Jack Nelson's the guy that I think, if he comes back for another year, really could help his draft stock. As it stands, I think he's a guy that, is he going to be a day 2 pick? Probably not. Although you could see as many as 9 offensive tackles taken in round number 1. I mean, it's crazy just how much depth there is. Because of that could push him down 3rd, 4th round range right now. And then Mumanjong Meta, the linebacker, very active at that linebacker position, 6 foot, 240 pounds. This was a guy that at one point they moved off the starting job, and I thought he responded very well. So watching him take on that LSU offense, really the big key with this one. I think LSU ends up getting it done. I just think there's too much talent on both sides of the football. The one matchup that I would like to see is Ricardo Hallman, the redshirt sophomore, 5'10", 185 pounds. See if he could get if either Malik Neighbors or Brian Thomas are playing in this game. I'd love to see what he could do against both of those guys. He's been a guy that's been a playmaker there on the outside, racking up the interceptions. So if we move to Saturday, December 30th, then you're looking at Penn State, Ole Miss in the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl. And matchup of teams that are in the top 11. When I look at this matchup, I think it's another interesting one. That we're going to be seeing here because I think with Penn State, you've got Drew Aller, you've got Nick Singleton running the football, and Theo Johnson has opted out, Chop Robinson has opted out, but I want to see Olufoshanu hasn't announced yet if he's going to play or not, but I would love to see him match up against some of the edge rushers there at Ole Miss. Really nothing to prove at this point, but Kalen King on the outside, these guys are both potential first rounders, so I could easily see them opting out of this draft. Adisa Isaac is a day 2 guy there as an edge rusher for Penn State. Is he going to stick it out or not? That's going to be a huge question mark. When you look at Ole Miss, you've got Jackson Dart, a promising quarterback, started his career at USC. What's that ultimately going to look like, when he comes back next year, being able to really get some of that momentum. You've got Quinshon Judkins as well, who's going to be one of the top running backs in next year's draft class. But if there's a receiver that could come out this year, and again, he could end up coming back, is Trey Harris. 6'2", 205, dynamic on the outside, good catch radius as well, playmaker in space. You get him lined up there. I'd love to see him against Kalen King. If I'm King, I'd want to sit there and showcase my ability against a guy like that. So that'd be an interesting matchup for sure. I think moving on from there, you've got the Music City Bowl, Auburn and Maryland. And Auburn, I think you've got your quarterback now. That's really a big key, because you kicked around Robbie Ashford possibly as a quarterback. He's in the transfer portal. Your guy is Peyton Thorne. So you've got him throwing the football. There are a lot of young guys on both sides of the ball there for Auburn. I think if there is anybody that you really want to watch, it's going to be Jalen Simpson, the safety, the free safety. He's going to be a playmaker on the back end of the defense. Really, another guy that I feel like has been at Auburn for a long time. 6'1", 175, fifth-year senior, and 4 interceptions this past season, 7 in his career. Just a nose for the football, instinctive, took one of them back to the house. Maryland, Talia Tagovailoa is sitting out. I think that's huge for them. There are some other big names, Corey Dyches, their tight end, Jayshawn Barham, that are entering the transfer portal, bar on the linebacker. So I think Maryland is going to, especially the way that Auburn played against Bama in the Iron Bowl, I think there's a good chance that we're going to be seeing Auburn with the win here. Obviously you've got Bo Braid, Dante Trader at the safety positions, Jaquan Shepard at the corner spot. Those three guys on the back end, are going to make things tough for Peyton Thorne. I just don't know how much we're going to see from an offensive standpoint there with Maryland, but with Bo Braid, he's a top 10 safety in this year's draft class. 6'1", 201, 174 tackles in his career, 3 interceptions, 11 pass breakups. He's a physical player, a guy that is instinctive, makes the right reads, drives on the football in a hurry, good ball skills. So he's definitely a guy to be on the lookout for sure in that game. Orange Bowl, Florida State. I think they feel like they've been slighted. They're going up against Georgia. Johnny Wilson, Jared Verse. They're both sitting out. Jared Verse to me is a lock as a first rounder. Johnny Wilson though, there's a lot of talent in the receiver draft class this year. Johnny Wilson, I know he's 6'7", he's got the height, he's a vertical threat, but the drops also worry me. I love the catch radius. He makes some difficult catches, but he makes the easy ones just look a lot more difficult than they should. So when I look at Johnny Wilson, to me, I've got a day 3 grade on him right now. Would have loved to have seen him play in the bowl game, against Kamari Lassiter, and company there in the secondary. Keon Coleman, look, I would love to see what he could do again against Georgia's secondary. I don't think any of them have actually said anything that they are going to enter the portal or that they're going to opt out or anything like that. So I think that'd be a nice matchup. Keon Coleman, Jaheim Bell, going up against that secondary. When Georgia has the football, obviously Carson Beck, is he just a game manager or can he make plays on his own? That's really the big question mark for me. I've said that he's a game manager. Really want to see him elevate his game. Want to see him do that there against a very tough Florida State defense. Even if you take Jared Verse out of that, you've got Braden Fisk. This dude plays with his hair on fire. He's physical at the point of attack, very athletic for an interior lineman as well. And then I think the linebackers, Kalen DeLoach and Tatum Bethune, they're undersized linebackers, but they fly around and make plays. When I look at Georgia, is Ladd McConkey, is he healthy enough to play? Is he going to decide to opt out? Brock Bowers is another one. He's battled that ankle injury. Amarius Mims, when he's healthy, he looks like a top 15 pick, but he hasn't been healthy. This is the guy that's been limited in his action overall, at Georgia. So the question really is going to be, do you take a guy without a whole lot of actual playing experience? When he has played, he's looked the part. But do you take a chance on that early in round number 1? I just don't know that you do. Cedric Van Prawn, being able to see him go up against Braden Fisk would be a lot of fun. And then, the flip side, Nazir Stackhouse, I think he needs a big game to rebound from that Bama game where he kind of got pushed around at the point of attack. Again, if Keon Coleman is playing in this game, then I think Kamari Lassiter and Javon Bullard, those are 2 guys that should play. Same thing with Jaheim Bell. If those guys, Coleman and Bell, are playing, then Bullard and Lassiter, as competitors, you want to see them play against each other. That's really a big game that I'm keeping an eye on. I'm hoping that we do see that matchup. It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. Now, Toledo and Wyoming in the Arizona Bowl. DeQuan Finn entered the transfer portal, and so he won't be in this game. Vinny Scurry, their guard, he's another guy that I was keeping an eye on. He's another guy that's entered the portal. But Quinyon Mitchell is a guy that I'm really keeping an eye on. To me, a lot of people think that he may be a day 2 guy. I think he's a day 1, first round pick. I think there's no question about it. 6 foot, 197 pounds. This is a guy, look, six interceptions, 45 pass breakups in his career, has a nose for the football, drives on it quickly, the click and close, and then the ability to make that play on the ball. He can press man, off coverage, man-to-man zone, you name it. This is a guy that excels in all areas. He can be physical when he needs to be. He's a guy that's going to drive on the football in a hurry. He looks to make a play on the ball. The ball skills are evident. So Quinyon Mitchell to me is going to be one of those key players, key performers there for Toledo. The other guy that I'm curious to see play is Dallas Gant, the linebacker, 6'3", 235, very active. This guy, he's a 6-year senior, played 4 years at Ohio State before transferring to Toledo. 116 tackles last year, another 109 this year, 13.5 tackles for loss between those two games with 7 pass breakups. He's athletic. He's a guy that can play in space. Look for him to potentially challenge to be a late day 3 pick because of his ability to do a lot of different things. And I think this will be his last chance to be able to showcase that for NFL teams. I'd be surprised if Quinyon Mitchell plays, but I could definitely see something cooking up there for Dallas Gant. And then Easton Gibbs for Wyoming. He's 6'2", 230 pounds. He's only a junior, so there's a good chance he'll probably come back for one more year. I think that probably would behoove him to come back to Laramie, but to the instincts. Back-to-back 100 tackle seasons, 22.5 tackles for loss, 7 sacks in his career, 9 pass breakups. You want this guy patrolling the middle of your defense. The question really is going to be for Toledo, who's going to be the quarterback, because Andrew Peasley is a veteran. You've got Harrison Whaley, the running back, there at Wyoming. Toledo without Finn, that's going to be your big question mark. How well will they be able to move the football, throwing the football? Tucker Gleason, big question mark there. But you've got Penny Boone, the running back. He's the guy that we'll be talking about in next year's draft class. He's a big physical dude, 6'1", 245 pounds, transferred into Toledo from Maryland, 1,400 yards on the ground and 15 touchdowns, a power back. Physical, only 31 receptions in his career, so not a guy that is being asked to catch the football much, but that physicality is probably going to give Wyoming trouble. But I'd love to see Easton Gibbs and Penny Boone meeting each other in the hole and watching that outcome. I think I'd tune in just to watch that matchup as much as anything else at this point. If you move to just one day up, prior to that, then you're looking at the Friday, December 29th. I think the big game there is the Cotton Bowl Classic. Mizzou taking on Ohio State. And look, with the Buckeyes, Kyle McCord entered the transfer portal. He's going to Nebraska. You've got Julian Fleming in the transfer portal as well. Emeka Ibuka, Jack Sawyer, Tyleek Williams, Denzel Burke. They will all play in the game. Marvin Harrison is an opt-out candidate, but he hasn't actually opted out just yet. Devin Brown is going to be their quarterback. Tui Moloau, Michael Hall haven't announced anything yet, on the defensive side of the ball. When I look at this group, Travion Henderson, he's already said that he's returning next season. I think that's a key there for Ohio State. Being able to run the football is something that when he went down to injury, Ohio State really struggled, moving the ball because they're a little bit more one-dimensional. Obviously, if Marvin Harrison and Emeka Ibuka play in this game, then you're going to get to see really a great matchup on the outside with Chris Abrams-Drain, who I think is one of the better nickels in this year's draft class. And then you also have Ennis Rakestraw. He's only a redshirt junior, so he could come back for one more year. 6 foot, 188 pounds. He's got length, he's got ball skills. Those are the two guys to watch. I'd love to see that matchup with Ibuka and Marvin Harrison Jr. going up against those two guys. Tyron Hopper, that's a guy for that defense. He's been out since week 11 due to an ankle injury. Looks like Rakestraw, I take that back. He's been out since week 12, so there's a chance that he may not be playing. Head coach Eli Drinkwitz, sounds like everybody else will be able to play, including Hopper, but Rakestraw may be the guy that we miss, which is disappointing. But Mizzou, that offensive line, I think Javon Foster, he's a guy, he's big, he's physical, he has adequate length, and the footwork he looks slow at times, but he still gets the job done. And so it's not always pretty. I want to see what he can do against Moloau and Sawyer. If he can handle himself there, I think he's going to move up draft boards. I think that could put him potentially into day 2 category, with his ability to block in the running game. Luther Burden III, look, special talent there at the receiver position. He'll be a top receiver in next year's draft class. But the guy we have to talk about is the Burlsworth Award winner and the Doak Walker Award finalist, and that's Cody Schrader. Started his career at Truman State, my dad's alma mater, 8th in the Heisman voting this past season, 1,499 yards, that's 6.1 yards per carry, 13 touchdowns, also had 22 receptions on the year. This is a guy he's a one cut and go type of a dude. And he's a physical runner between the tackles. He's a guy that just runs through arm tackles. The contact balance is evident, and he has deceptive speed. I look at Schrader, against this defense. I think Mizzou's actually favored to win right now. The big question mark is going to be that quarterback play. I don't know. It's going to be interesting. When I look at Mizzou and I look at the tackles, you've got there at Ohio State, you've got a lot of veteran leadership on the interior of that line, especially at the guard spots with Donovan Jackson and Matthew Jones. But at defensive end, Darius Robinson, this dude is a player. He's 6'5", 296 pounds. He's physical. He's explosive coming off the football. He's the guy that they like to line up in a lot of different spots. 12 tackles for loss, 7.5 sacks. He's the guy that I think is going to present him a lot of problems. This is a game to me that's been difficult for me to really call. I think it really depends on who decides to play there at Ohio State. If everybody plays, then I think it's really going to be an interesting game. I think Mizzou has a chance to really showcase what they can do and really emerge as a national power, in the SEC conference, if they can take down Ohio State. I don't know that there are very many people that are giving them a chance to do that, but I'm looking forward to seeing what they can do. If they can actually make those plays. Iowa State taking on Memphis in the Liberty Bowl. TJ Tampa is the guy for me that I'm looking at Iowa State. 747 snaps on the year. TJ Tampa is a 6'2" corner. He's physical. He's a guy that likes to get up on you, especially in press coverage. 19 pass breakups in his career, 9.5 tackles for loss as well. When I watch Tampa play, he's a guy that he's not afraid. He doesn't shy away from contact. He's a guy that's going to want to play around the line of scrimmage. Even if he gets beaten off the line, I love the recovery speed and then his ability to challenge at the catch point. TJ Tampa, he's going to be the guy. The question is he going to opt out? I think that's going to be a huge question mark. Memphis are playing in their home stadium, so that's going to be something that's pretty cool. When you look at Memphis, I think the guy that everyone should be talking about in that matchup is going to be Blake Watson, the running back, right? Dynamic speedster. He's 6'2", 220 pounds, went over 1,000 yards this past season, 14 touchdowns, also 50 receptions as well. This guy's a versatile running back, and nobody's talking about him. And so you want to see what he can do there against Iowa State. So those are the two guys that I'm keeping an eye out for sure. Then you've got Oregon State taking on Notre Dame in the Sun Bowl. I think if everybody was playing in this game, it would be very exciting. Damian Martinez was suspended for the bowl game after being arrested on suspicion of DUI. Joshua Gray, their left tackle, missed the regular season finale, so he may not be playing. Taliese Fuaga, the right tackle, who I think is a first rounder, there's no question about it. He's opting out. DJ Uiagalelei has entered the transfer portal. There's a lot of key players on defense. Easton Mascarenas Arnold, Akili Arnold, the brothers, transferring to USC. Trent Bray, the defensive coordinator, has been promoted to head coach, with Jonathan Smith taking the offer at Michigan State. So a lot of turmoil there at Oregon State. Really, what are we going to see there? Who's actually going to be taking the field for the Beavers? Now with Notre Dame, Sam Hartman is opting out, which I thought was kind of weird. He's a guy that is going to be a late day 3 pick if he gets drafted at all. He feels almost like Brock Purdy going into the draft when Purdy was Mr. Irrelevant. I don't know if Sam Hartman has enough arm strength to get himself drafted. Audric Estime is also opting out. Estime to me is a top 5 back in this year's draft. The physicality with which he plays, the ability to get downhill in a hurry. Both Joe Alt and Blake Fisher also opting out. Joe Alt, that makes perfect sense. He's a guy that could be a top 5 pick. Blake Fisher, up and down season, I thought. He's a guy to me that is he a day 2 guy? Is he an early day 3 guy? That's really a big question mark. I would have loved to have seen Mitchell Evans in this game, but he tore his ACL in week 9, so we're not going to get to see that. We do know that Howard Cross is coming back for another year, so that's obviously a question mark there with him. So it's nice to see that he'll be back for one more season and be able to develop. And then Xavier Watts. He's going to play in the bowl game. Is he going to come back for one more year? I think for his ability, he's a converted receiver, and 7 interceptions on the year, puts himself in the right place at the right time to make the right play on the football. I'd love to see him come back for one more year because I don't think he's going to be a top 3 or 4 safety, which means he'll probably be a late day 2 pick. I think he's a guy that has the ability to potentially be the number 1 safety coming off the board in next year's draft. So to me, I think it would behoove him to come back for one more year. But look, a big game against the Beavers here, could sway him in another direction. This is another game that's tough to call just because so many guys have opted out or have entered the transfer portal that your guess is as good as mine. I mean, Notre Dame, their offensive coordinator, Gerard Parker, actually accepted the offer to be the head coach at Troy. So another guy down there. So really going to be interesting to see how all of that plays out. When you look at Clemson, they're taking on Kentucky in the Gator Bowl. Who's opted out of this game? Well, Kentucky, Ray Davis, he's declared for the draft, but he is expected to play in the bowl game. I look at Ray Davis, what he's been able to do, since moving to Kentucky from Vanderbilt. That's really been a huge boost, I think, for anybody who's a Kentucky fan, and the physicality with which he runs. That's something that I'd love to see there going up against that Clemson defense. We already know that Rook Ororo, the defensive tackle, Jeremiah Trotter, is he a first rounder? Probably going to end up being a day 2 guy. Nate Wiggins has a chance to be the number 1 corner. They're all opting out. Is Tyler Davis going to play? Is it going to be Barrett Carter? You're going to see some young guys likely playing and stepping up there for Clemson. Is Andrew Makuba enter the transfer portal? I think the big question mark is going to be, is Will Shipley going to play? Because you're going to have Clay Klubnik, who struggled at the quarterback position. But if you can just hand the ball off to Will Shipley, get the football to him, film off of the physicality as well. Look, with Kentucky, where they struggle is really Dylan Leary. Dylan Leary has had really kind of an up and down year, and mostly down, which has really been surprising. Expecting him to have a much bigger year, and really I think the same thing with Klubnik. Which quarterback can come out and have the better game, and really the running backs, Ray Davis and Will Shipley. Those are going to be guys that I think everyone's going to be watching for. Another game that I think is going to be tough to call, between the groups, but I think it's going to be a showcase of the 2 running backs when it's all said and done. So on the 28th, you got Oklahoma taking on Arizona. That's in the Alamo Bowl. Tyler Guyton, the right tackle there at OU, converted tight end. Actually, I think he's also a defensive lineman as well at one point. But he's opted out, as has the center, Andrew Rame. And then, to make matters worse, their guards, both Caden Green and Savion Byrd, have opted out. So they're really young up front. Running back wise, Tommy Walker, Marcus Major, Dylan Smothers all enter the portal as well. So you're going to have basically Gavin Sawchuk. You're going to have Jackson Arnold out there at quarterback. So this is going to be a very thin team. Plus, Seth Luttrell kicking in as the offensive coordinator. I think ultimately what you're going to see is Nick Anderson, a heavy dose of him in the passing game, or at least you should. And then Drake Stoops. Watch out for Drake Stoops, Bob Stoops' son. He's a guy to me that I think has a chance to get drafted, but a guy that he reminds me a lot of Hunter Renfrow with the way he plays. Attacks the middle of the field, quicker than he is fast, but a sudden receiver, about the same size. I think he has a good chance to get drafted, especially if he has a big bowl game there against Arizona. Danny Stutzman, Billy Bowman, both have announced that they're coming back to Norman. That's huge, I think, for both of them because frankly, I look at them, they weren't going to be day 2 guys. I think they've got to play themselves. I think I heard people saying Stutzman 3rd round. I think he's a 4th rounder right now. I think Billy Bowman had a chance to be a 3rd round guy, probably more likely 4th or 5th round right now. So they come back, play one more year, especially in the SEC. Big years from them. Expect them to move up draft boards. Arizona, left tackle Jordan Morgan opted out. Frankly, this is going to be a team that you're going to enjoy watching the passing attack. You're going to get to see Noah Fafita, the freshman, stepped in for Jaden DeLora, who was an interception machine to start out the year. Fafita, a lot like Jaden DeLora, except he doesn't throw the interceptions. He takes care of the football. And then you have Teteroa McMillan on the outside, a receiver who's going to be a top 5 wide receiver in next year's draft class. Mark my words with that. Jacob Cowing, is he going to play? I think he should. Let him showcase his talent one last time. I think he's a day 2 lock. Slot receiver, very sudden as a route runner. Veteran receiver. I think Arizona ends up getting it done against OU, although, really the big question mark is going to be, only because they're the question marks, what can Jackson Arnold do there at the quarterback position, and can that offensive line hold up and block for him against a feisty Arizona defense? That's going to be a huge question mark for me, which is why I've got to go with Arizona at least right now. NC State and K-State, that's in the Pop-Tarts Bowl. You know how I feel with Peyton Wilson. I talked about him in the last podcast. I look at him, and he's a guy for me that has a chance to be a first rounder if the medicals hold up. So I could easily see him opting out of this game. He hasn't announced anything yet, but he's the guy, if he plays, that you have to watch for sure. Opting out of the K-State side, Phillip Brooks, the receiver, I think, and Ben Sinnott. I think a lot of that is largely due to the fact that Will Howard, the quarterback, is opting out, which means Avery Johnson is expected to start. Johnson's more of a runner. Plus they lose Colin Klein, offensive coordinator at Texas A&M now. So, what's the question? What's going to happen with Cooper Beebe? Is he going to opt out as well? So you lose, this bowl game loses some of its luster with a lot of these different opt-outs. But if you get to watch Cooper Beebe, if he does get to play, he's a lot of fun. Very physical at the point of attack, has the athleticism to play tackle, but he's going to be a guard and just a nasty dude. Surprising athleticism to climb to the second level, but he's a dude that's going to want to maul you and beat you up. Pinstripe Bowl is Rutgers and Miami. Rutgers, Max Melton has opted out. He was the guy that I was looking forward to see him take on some of those receivers there for Miami. With the Hurricanes, Xavier Restrepo, Jacoby George is really the receiver that I'll be watching next year. The opt-outs for Miami, Leonard Taylor, Cam Kinchens, James Williams, really the focal points of that defense. So you lose those guys. Taylor, fringe first rounder. He's got the athleticism, but he's battled some injuries. I think he'll be either a late first round, early second round pick. Same with Cam Kinchens, a do everything safety. He's my number 2 guy behind Cooper DeJean. And then James Williams, a big physical dude. He's going to come down, play around the line of scrimmage, box safety. Is he a Divine Diablo type of a guy? I think there's a possibility there. Is he a day 2, early day 3? That's probably where he fits. I think Miami still has enough talent to get the job done there against Rutgers, but keep an eye on Kyle Monagai, the running back. He's coming back to Rutgers for another season. He's a guy, though, that is going to be a lot of fun to watch and really be able to see how he stacks up against an ACC power like Miami. SMU taking on BC. When you look at SMU, looks like a pretty clean team for the most part, outside of Preston Stone going down to injury. Their quarterback, not really a whole lot of activity in the transfer portal or in terms of opt-outs, which is a good thing, obviously, for the program. Says a lot about what Rhett Lashley has going on there and what he's building program-wise. The biggest guy to watch is R.J. Maryland, the tight end. He's only a sophomore, so not eligible for this year's draft, but the reason why I bring him up is the talent is absolutely off the chart. 6'4", 233 pounds. He's a dynamic playmaker when you get the football in his hands. He's not the best blocker yet, so that's why I'm glad that he's got another year there at least for SMU. Look, 34 catches, 518 yards. That's 15.2 yards per reception, 7 touchdowns, excellent hands, good speed after the catch. He's a guy to watch for SMU. And then with BC, they've got some transfers, but the guy that I'm going to be watching is a guy that didn't get to play at all last year, a guy that I thought had a chance to potentially enter the draft early, and that is Christian Mahogany, the right guard. Big number 73, 6'3", 322 pounds. This guy's a physical player. There at the right guard spot. I think you're going to be seeing, is he on par with the Lindstroms? Probably not. He's kind of a step below that. But again, very physical at the point of attack. He's a guy to me that I think is going to be a day 3 pick, 4th, 5th, 6th round. But I think he's going to stick with an NFL team for a long time. I think he does have starter potential. Which finally takes us to December 27th, which is the only other day that we have left in terms of our bowl games. You look at Texas A&M, Ainias Smith has opted out, as has Edgerrin Cooper, my number 1 linebacker. Layden Robinson, the guard. Day 2 potential, likely a day 3 pick. And then McKinley Jackson. A lot of people have him as a potential first rounder. I don't see it. I think he's a mid day 2 guy at best. A&M, they've got a lot of guys in the transfer portal, from Max Johnson to Evan Stewart to Chase Besantis to Fadil Diggs on defense, Tyreek Chappell, the safety Jardine Gilbert. So a lot of question marks here. You've got Mike Elko, who's going to be the new head coach. Looks like Elijah Robinson, who had been the interim head coach, he took the defensive coordinator job at Syracuse, but it sounds like he'll actually be the interim head coach for this bowl game. I just think that there's a lot of turmoil right now with Texas A&M, so I really don't know what to expect in this bowl game. I think Moose Muhammad has a chance to showcase some of his talent there at the receiver position. Bryce Foster, the center, only a junior. He'll probably come back. Kind of an up and down year for him. Damani Richardson, the free safety, another guy to watch out for sure. But not getting to see Edgerrin Cooper, a guy that I thought this year really emerged. You worry sometimes about guys that have that 1 year breakout seasons. But this was a guy that I think was building into what he's become. And that's the guy that is an edge rusher, as well as a guy that can make plays around the line of scrimmage. Very active, 84 tackles, 17 tackles for loss, 8 sacks. Another guy who was a lot of fun to watch for me. He proved as a sophomore that he could also drop into coverage, have 5 pass breakups on the year. So I think the versatility is absolutely there. Was he asked to drop into coverage a lot? No. But I think that's something that we'll definitely be keeping an eye on for sure. Oklahoma State, look, Oklahoma State, they make their way to the Big 12 championship and they get throttled by Texas. Ollie Gordon, the Doak Walker Award winner, could he opt out of the bowl game? I guess he could, but he's only a sophomore, so he's coming back. So that'd be kind of weird unless he's actually looking to transfer, and I don't think there's any indication that he is. 7th in the Heisman voting. over 1,600 yards, 20 touchdowns to go along with 37 receptions on the year. Very versatile running back. Colin Oliver is the edge rusher, and I've seen that there's a chance that he may opt out. I just don't think that Colin Oliver has done enough to warrant that. 6'2", 225 pounds. He really hasn't lived up to that freshman billing where he had 15 and a half tackles for loss, 10 and a half sacks. In the next 2 seasons, he really, this past season finally hit the 15 and a half tackles for loss, but he's just equal the sack total, pretty much of his freshman year. In the last 2 years, 11 sacks. Just hasn't really built on that. Showed off better ability, getting his hands up into throwing lanes, 5 pass breakups, 4 forced fumbles. So he's got that nose for the football. The 71 tackles, though, showing that he can be a lot more active. I still think he needs to come back to Oklahoma State for one more year. I think Oklahoma State's going to end up pulling this one off. I think Texas, there's Texas A&M. There's still a lot of chaos, a lot of things going on there. I ultimately think that we're going to see Oklahoma State pull out a shocker. Louisville and USC in the Holiday Bowl in San Diego. This is a real odd game to really figure out exactly what's going on here. Caleb Williams, he opted out. Malachi Nelson entered the transfer portal, so you're going to see Miller Moss really get the start there. This defense, what can I say? Alex Grinch, he's not there anymore. Danton Lynn has come in from UCLA. This is a guy that's building a tremendous defense for next year. I mean, you look at the coaching staff already with Matt Entz from North Dakota State, the head coach, 2-time FCS champion head coach, also a champion at the defensive coordinator position. Then you bring in Doug Belk to coach the DBs. His last stop was at Houston as a defensive coordinator. He's sent a lot of guys to the NFL as well. USC, I think Jonah Monheim, the left tackle, really has to step up and have a big game. He's struggled with speed off the edge. I think he's proven that he has to kick inside to guard. I don't even think he can play right tackle. Kick inside to guard. Taj Washington is a receiver. Brendan Rice gets a lot of the hype, because of all the touchdowns, but he wasn't the most consistent receiver. A lot of drops from Brendan Rice. So really want to see, what Taj Washington can do. He's been, like I said, the most consistent receiver for the Trojans. His final season there. Marshawn Lloyd also opted out. And Marshawn Lloyd, the quick feet, his ability to make plays both in the running game and the passing game, but the drops and the fumbles with him, I think would drive you nuts. I thought Travis Dye, he worked his way onto a practice squad. I'm looking at Austin Jones and thinking there's a chance that he might be able to do the same thing. When I look at Louisville, though, Cameron Kelly, the safety, he's decided he's going to go ahead and play in this game. But Jawar Jordan and Jamari Thrash, the top wideout and running back, they've both opted out. Jawar Jordan has the speed on the outside. That's really been what's exciting. Isaac Garendo is going to be taking over for him. Jamari Thrash, the transfer from Georgia State, playmaker on the outside, and fifth-year senior. He's getting ready for the draft. He's a guy that I think is a fringe second to third round pick, but definitely a guy that I think can be exciting there. He's opted out as well, so I'm looking at Ashton Gelati. Ashton Gelati's only a junior. This is a guy that I think could end up having a field day against Jonah Monheim and the rest of that offensive line. 6'2", 270 pounds, 14 and a half tackles for loss this past season, 11 sacks, 22 in his career. Again, only a junior, so he can come back. Plays with excellent leverage, gets underneath the offensive tackle's pad level, speed to power, although he does, he can bend, can turn the corner, get into the backfield, make plays. I think he's the guy that USC really needs to be worried about. Miller Moss, not nearly as mobile as Caleb Williams, so I think that could pose problems. I think Louisville wins this game going away, but I think the future is bright for USC, at least defensively, with Danton Lynn and company running that defense. Now, North Carolina taking on West Virginia in the Duke's Mayo Bowl. No Drake May, so Connor Harrell is stepping in. Tez Walker, a guy that I think is going to be a day 2 pick. Corey Gaynor, the center, Cedric Gray, the inside linebacker, who is going to be a mid-day 3 pick, I think. They've all opted out. Kamari Morales, the tight end, has entered the transfer portal. So, I'm sitting here looking at this game, at least on the UNC side, trying to figure out who's the guy that I want to watch. And I think it's probably going to be Bryson Nesbitt, the tight end, if he's even playing. That's going to be a big question mark. He may actually even move to receiver for this game, just because of all the opt-outs and transfer portal and everything. 6'5", 235, very athletic. I think that's one of the things that jumps out. You're going to see him, that athleticism on display. Came on Rucker, really started off strong as an edge rusher, 6'1", 265. Looked like a guy that would just fit in nicely as an edge rusher for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Since that, that early burst on the scene that got everybody talking about him, kind of cooled off. 56 tackles, 14 going for loss, 8.5 sacks. So if we look at his game logs in 2023, had the eight tackles, 5.5 tackles for loss, 2 sacks against South Carolina. Had a couple of sacks against Pitt in game 4, 2.5 sacks against Miami, and then after that, in his final 6 games, just 2 sacks. So, a guy that when you're looking for him to make big plays, it came in bunches, but a lot of times he would disappear as well. And yes, teams were focusing in on number 25. That allowed number 23 Power Echols, the middle linebacker, to make some plays there at that linebacker position, and also free things up for Cedric Gray as well. Power Echols is an interesting kid. He's 5'11", 220 pounds. Will probably go back-to-back seasons with 100 tackles. Very active player. Only a junior. He'll come back. But I think with Kayvon Rucker, he'll still get drafted as a situational edge rusher, but just the fact that he disappears, that's going to be a big concern, I think, more than anything else. When I look at West Virginia, the guy really to watch out for there is going to be the center, Zach Frazier. If there's anything that you really should be watching in this game, especially if he gets to go up against Miles Murphy. Miles Murphy's already announced that he's entering the draft, but he's going to be playing in the game. Keep an eye there. It sounds like there's a chance that Zach Frazier may not be playing, but if he does play, that's going to be the matchup to watch there on the interior of that offensive line. And then C.J. Donaldson, the running back, only a sophomore, but a physical presence. He's a guy that's going to be a lot of fun to watch. And then Beanie Bishop, the corner. He's 5'10", 184 pounds, transferred in from Western Kentucky. And ball skills, yes. But can the guy finish? Absolutely not. So many drops. I think they give him a hard time for all the drops that we've seen there from him at West Virginia. But look, you can't argue with the fact that he has 20 pass breakups and 4 interceptions. It's just he should have so many more interceptions because he's always around the football. He's a guy that I think Connor Harrell is going to have to watch out for. He's going to probably get a lot of chances to make some plays on the football. Big thing is he going to be able to actually hold on to the football and make a play there for the Mountaineers. I think the Mountaineers have a chance in this game. I think just because all the guys that are sitting out there at North Carolina, the way that offensive line is played this year, I think they've got a shot. Then the Military Bowl, Tulane taking on Virginia Tech. When I look at this game, Tulane, Michael Pratt is preparing for the NFL, which means, and with Kai Horton, their quarterback, also entering the portal, it's going to be a big question mark. I think Justin Ibieta, 39 career pass attempts. He's going to be the guy that's going to be throwing the football. That's going to be a huge concern on the offensive side of the ball for Tulane. So the guy that I really want to focus on is Patrick Jenkins. Big number 0 on the interior of that line. This is a guy that I think is going to get himself drafted. Again, undersized. I think he's 6 foot, 286 pounds, but 11.5 tackles for loss, 5.5 sacks on the year. He's explosive with the quick first step. He's a guy that's going to look to shoot as a 5 technique. he's just undersized. And so that's why I think he'll be a late day 3 pick. I think he does get drafted. I think he will end up making a roster. And I think he'll be a better pro than people really are giving him credit for right now. I don't think he's on a lot of radars as a guy that is going to get taken very high. But I think he's a guy that, again, is going to get drafted late, and a guy that is probably going to make some plays at the next level. And then the corners, both Jarius Monroe, 6'2", 205, Lance Robinson, 5'11", 180. They both transferred in to Tulane. Their career started elsewhere. Monroe at Nicholls State, and Robinson at K-State. Those are 2 guys. And then Cam Pettisclaw, the anchor back, if you will, on the back end of the defense, came in from Louisiana. Those 3 guys, all seniors, all veterans on the back end. Those will be guys to watch there going up against Va Tech. Linebacker Tyler Grubbs is an interesting guy. Transferred in from Louisiana Tech, 6'2", 230. He's a guy to watch out for next year's draft. And then when you look at Virginia Tech, Ollie Jennings, I would have loved to see what he could do, what he did at Old Dominion. Would have loved to have seen that, but the season-ending injury in week 1, we really haven't gotten to see much of what he was going to be able to do there. So I'll be curious to see if he gets a medical red shirt and can come back to Va Tech next year. When I look at Virginia Tech, I think offensively, Jalen Lane brings that athleticism, 5'10", 192 pounds. The transfer from Middle Tennessee. But the running back, only a junior, transferred in from North Carolina A&T. Bashal he's 5'11", 205, and one of the best running backs that people haven't really been talking about. He was the transfer, came in there. The Hokies struggled. 727 yards on the ground, 8 touchdowns, 25 receptions as well. It took him a little bit to kind of be the focal point of that offense, but he's a guy to watch out for as we continue to progress. Jalen Lane's a guy that I want to see him have a big game in this bowl game, just kind of as a showcase to potentially get himself drafted. I think he's the guy that can be explosive on the outside. Will he get drafted? I think he'll probably be a priority free agent, but he's a guy that I think needs to showcase that. Va Tech has a great chance, especially because I have no clue who's going to be the quarterback there at Tulane. And then on top of that, with Willie Fritz taking the hire there at Houston, Slade Nagel, offensive coordinator. Looks like he's going to be the interim coach before he actually leaves Tulane to move with Fritz to Houston. A lot of turmoil there, so I think when you look at Virginia Tech, you look at what Brent Pry has had, what he's been doing there and building the program up. I think there's a chance that a lot of those young guys are going to be hungry for that program, and I think there's a good chance. Kyron Drones, he's a big quarterback at 6'2", 234 pounds, transferred in from Baylor. I think Virginia Tech has a great chance to come away with the win. Look, they're 6-6, but 5-3 in conference. Slow start to the season. This would be a nice way to really cap things off for the Hokies. So we've covered all the bowls, everything but the national championship, and really we'll have time after bowl season to talk about that before we get into that championship. So I think it's actually 40 bowls that we've covered over the last 2 podcasts. A lot of guys to still keep an eye on in this bowl season, even with all the opt-outs and the transfer portal and everything else, injuries and such. But I think it's still going to be a fun season. I think it's going to be, when you look at the college football playoff, you look at those 4 teams that are in there, I think you're going to have some really dynamic games, some interesting matchups to say the least. I do think that it's going to be Michigan and Washington when it's all said and done. I think some of the other intriguing matchups, again, Ohio State taking on Missouri. I think that's going to be really a lot of fun. Brady Cook, can he put together a consistent game? Georgia taking on Florida State. Without Jared Verse, Georgia, who's going to be playing in that game? I think Georgia could end up running away with that one. And if that happens, then there are going to be a lot of naysayers looking at Florida State saying, we'll see, I told you so. Mississippi and Penn State, I think, will be a very fun game to watch as well. Even with a couple of opt-outs there, I think that'll be a fun game. Arizona and OU, really getting to see the next generation there for Brent Venables and the Sooners. It's going to be the Jackson Arnold show, so tune in and kind of see what that's going to look like. And then Oregon, kind of the swan song for Bo Nix. It's going to be start number 61 for him. So get to see Bo Nix one last time in an Oregon uniform. So even though he didn't make it into the playoff, we'll still get to see him in the bowl game. And then if I haven't really gotten to break anything down just yet with Michigan and Washington. I think this Washington team is pretty sound defensively. I look at the offense. They're balanced on the offensive side of the football. I think they can hang with Michigan. I think their defense has enough to make them one-dimensional. And, really, I know the physicality with that running game, but I think there's enough there up front for Washington, and the way that those linebackers play, the way that Tuli Nasanoa and company up front. They've got a lot of big physical dudes up front that I think can hang with Michigan. I think there's a great chance that Washington gets it done against Michigan. Now, granted, I say that, and Michigan can just sit there, ball control, let Blake Corum go crazy. I don't think J.J. McCarthy wins it for you. I think that's going to be the thing, too, is can Michigan stop Michael Penix Jr.? I think they're going to want to run the ball, and I think that Washington has enough on that side of the football to shut down, well, I shouldn't say shut down the run, but they have enough to force Michigan to beat them with the pass. And I just don't know that there's going to be enough there that Michigan will be able to match what Washington brings to the table throwing the football. So I think it'll be interesting. We'll see how everything plays out on January 1st, and then we'll get a chance to talk about the bowl and really some of the different matchups. We'll know at that point who's going head-to-head and then what matchups to watch out for, really as we start ending the season and really getting into the pre-draft process. And what's that last set of matchups? What does that mean for the NFL draft? So until next time, everyone.